The modern designer / architect I am focusing on is Marcus Barlow, and I will cover the decade of the 1930s. In the areas of modernism, he had a focus on Art Deco in his building designs. Barlow designed the Manchester Unity building, which was completed in 1932. This is the building in which I will give the most attention. I'll also cover Barlow's design of the Century building, which was completed in 1939. I will look at both the architecture and interiors and review how he incorporated modernist ideas. The contemporary designer I will focus on in comparison is Nonda Katsoulidis. He and his partners were responsible for the design of the Eureka Tower and the newly completed Australia 108 building. Barlow's Manchester Unity building will receive the most focus in this presentation. The Century building as well as the Eureka Tower and Australia 108 will be discussed in comparison. Marcus Barlow was born in Melbourne in 1890. He died in 1954. He worked in several different architect firms before creating his own firm in 1927. He had strong social consciousness with a focus on public interests. He was the first consulting architect appointed to the Housing Commission of Victoria in 1937. He was prominent in building health centres and understood changing social attitudes towards maternal and child health and community health. This is also the only known image of Marcus Barlow. Manchester Unity building is a modernist Art Deco building completed in 1932. The building is of concrete encased steel construction. The exterior cladding consists of 250 tonnes of terracotta tiles. Australian marble is used extensively in the interior walls. It was the first building in Melbourne to feature escalators and elevators. The building's roof reaches 132 feet. All of this was extremely innovative for its time. However, modernism with Art Deco influence was very popular in other building designs in Melbourne in the 1930s. The Provident Life building on Queen Street and Victoria House, also on Queen Street, are two such examples built in the 1930s.
As we're inside the Manchester Unity building from Marcus Barlow, we can see there's a lot of modernism aspects such as gold, brass and copper. The Manchester Unity building also had the first lifts in Australia.
The Manchester Unity building evokes the actual spirit of times, which is an important aspect of modernism. The Century building, completed in 1939, continued with some of Barlow's approaches relating to modernism, but in a more simplistic form. The concept of modernisation can relate to Barlow's design of the Century building in several ways. The Century building was designed 7 years after the Manchester Unity building, and we can see there is more of a traditional process in that we're moving from traditional approaches to building design, to adopting newer and changing ways. It had elements of a Tudor design, but the health centre was progressive in concept, with greater emphasis on infant and maternal health. Barlow used the concept of modernism in many ways. The newly available high-quality decorative materials such as brass, copper, gold and woods, and well-designed mosaics were featured in the MU building. Modern design principles are expressed in Barlow's work in many ways. The design has the spirit of times and has a modern and progressive feel. The design fulfills the practical needs of modern life. Spacious floors, good design, modern elevators, etc. all help fulfill this. Also, as mentioned before, modern industrial materials such as steel, concrete and glass are also used. There is the mass production of the tiles on the outside of the building. This is an early example of this in Melbourne architecture. The Century building used this approach also. It used mass-produced tiles in a simple white, which was quite new for the time. This other modernist approach was very effective. Ideals of modernism are evident in Barlow's work in several ways. The design evokes the spirit of times. It is a bold statement and depicts confidence and progress, especially in the period of 1932 where the Manchester Unity building was being completed. Australia was coming out of the Great Depression at the time. There were signs of hope and the MU building showed this. It was grand, ambitious and modernist in its approach. Social statements are made in the decorative/ornamental artwork within the MU building. It shows images of Australia from early Indigenous Australians through to settlement, through to growth and development, right through to the Manchester Uni building being built in 1932, which was very modern and progressive at the time. It showed how far we've come, displaying the entire Australian experience in this way, including progress and acknowledgement of the Indigenous Australians, was not common in 1932. A key point is that it was built during the later stages of the Great Depression, which was a terrible time in Australia. A grand building like the Manchester Uni was designed to show people a glimpse of a bright future and a positive image. Incredibly, Melbourne and other parts of the Western world had a ridiculous height limit back then of 132 feet. No one ever told us where that specific figure came from, and a good question to have asked would have been, would the buildings have suddenly collapsed if they reached 133 feet? The floors of the Manchester Uni building reached this limit, and Barlow was able to get City Council approval to build the spire to an additional 72 feet on top of the building, which was an achievement at the time. The council believed this would be an excellent architectural addition. For the modern contemporary designer, Nonda Katsalidis is a Greek-Australian architect known for many prominent works in Melbourne. He is known for creating many residential complexes in the Melbourne CBD, the most well-known work being his design for the Eureka Tower in conjunction with Nonda Katsalidis architects. Nonda Katsalidis demonstrates modernist principles in his works. Broadly speaking, the Eureka Tower has been considered modern in its architectural style. Katsalidis was influenced by Barlow's work in several different ways. The Eureka Tower is often described as modern in its design, and there are elements of Art Deco as well. It also has some clear purpose and meaning, the way some of Barlow's designs did. Modernist construction is evident with glass, steel, reinforced concrete, etc. Art elements are represented in the design. It is named after the Eureka Stockade, and the blue glass cladding with the white lines represents the Eureka Stockade flag. The gold parts represent the gold rush in Victoria. Other gold elements include the art installation of the bees in the white box. With the gold additions to the Eureka Tower, there is some subtle Art Deco influence. In fact, the Melbourne Art Deco book by Robin Grow highlights some Art Deco influence which continues in buildings post-2000s. Grow is also the president of the Art Deco and Modernism Society of Australia. It's dedicated to the preservation and celebration of aspects of Art Deco and modernism. The Australia 108 building was originally designed to complement the Eureka Tower. Katsalidis said getting approval for the building was initially difficult as it was thought to be excessively high in comparison with the other buildings. The theme of the blue glass and some white stripes on Australia 108 is replicated from the Eureka Tower. There is also some subtle Art Deco influence in this design. The most interesting artistic feature is the starburst representing the Commonwealth Star on the Australian flag. It is a 7-point star representing the Federation of Australia. Katsalidis' design of Australia 108 has a modernist interpretation of the decorative/ornamental elements used by Barlow during the core modernist Art Deco period of the 1930s. We see marble journey, wooden floorboards, polished silver and steel fittings, etc. throughout. These buildings use all modern and advanced materials. They have a feel for the current times. They are practical and fulfill the needs of modern life. Being the two tallest buildings in Melbourne, they complement each other in appearance very well. The four buildings I have focused on in this presentation have become some of the most well-known and iconic buildings in Melbourne from the past eras to present day. I believe it's a combination of clever modern design principles, planning, and the designer's vision that creates a superior end result. Will the Eureka Tower be around in 70 or 80 years, the way Manchester Uni building is? I think it is a strong possibility. My insights: preservation of older style cultural. Valuable heritage listed architecture helps with the fabric of Melbourne, something I've been interested in for many years in high school. I participated in the campaign to write to the council to help save the Astor Theatre in St Kilda, for example. This prohibits these buildings getting demolished and being replaced with apartments.